I have had a sketchbook for as long as I can remember. I took my sketchbook with me wherever I went. Throughout primary school, I'd share my drawings with classmates and try to convince them to read my stories. In high school, I'd sketch fairies and goblins during Afrikaans class. University was no different. I remember telling my physics partner about the difference between a troll and an ogre after he mistook my troll drawing for an ogre. Some sketchbooks were filled to the last page, some were abandoned, and I started afresh on a new one. I was also writing a bunch of fantasy books, so I ended up illustrating my own characters and environments from my stories, in between life studies and color practices. I never had any formal education, so I skipped the fundamentals. A few times, my dad tried to convince me to study drawing fundamentals through an online course, and I did try, but I found it much less exciting than just drawing what I liked in my sketchbook. So I stuck to drawing what I liked. Trees, moss, foliage, leaves, creatures, fairies. There's some things that I never realized or wondered until I started posting on social media in 2018, and people were asking me, where do my ideas come from? How do I finish sketchbooks? Do I ever experience burnout? What advice can I share about drawing fantasy creatures? After graduating, I had more free time to be with my sketchbook, to really absorb the moments where a new idea arrived fresh in my mind. I was reading the book Mastery by Robert Greene, and that led me to discover a book called Building Your Second Brain by Tiago Forte. In his book, Forte describes the second brain method as a tool to organize digital files and tons of information, so you can retrieve and process it more efficiently. Your figurative second brain is used to store masses of information, so your first brain can be optimized to think of ideas and execute them. This idea put a lot of things into perspective regarding my sketchbook practice and the practice of so many other great artists I admired. In March this year, I wrote a mini ebook about 30 pages about how artists can use the second brain method for finishing sketchbooks, improving our skills, and creating meaningful artworks. In this video, I want to talk more about this method and what I wrote in the book, since I have been receiving a lot of questions about it and there aren't enough sources on the internet that talks about combining the second brain method and art. I want to also clarify that there are, of course, many ways to improve your skills. This method is just one of the ways I found has worked with me. I did not make it up to sell a book. I genuinely use this method and it has helped me fill sketchbooks, be more free when experimenting with supplies, and come up with new ideas for stories and artworks. So if you Google the second brain method, you'll find a formal definition of the method as coined by a productivity expert named Tiago Forte. You might be thinking, no thanks, Chiara. I already have one problematic brain. I don't need another one. So to that, I'll have to explain that this method is not referring to a literal second brain. It's a figurative one. In Forte's book, he explains that the second brain method is a system of organizing and managing information to enhance learning and productivity. It's a digital or online system to store tons of information and be able to use them more efficiently. Okay, so what does that mean? Picture it this way. Your first brain is best used for thinking, analyzing, and processing information. This figurative second brain is best used for storage and collection. When you have a brilliant idea, you jot it down or create a digital note. When you find an interesting image or article that sparks your imagination, you save it in your digital vault. This second brain becomes a repository for all the things that fuel your creativity. Here's another thing. We've already been using this method without even realizing it. Don't you have a notes app on your smartphone filled with lists and your favorite song lyrics, or even the most random things that perhaps you never looked at again but have the strong feeling that you will need it? Shopping lists, quotes, random words, task lists. So how does this relate to artists and originality? I'll take the example of a visual artist, a painter or an illustrator, but it can be applied to any other creative field like literature and photography. As an illustrator, our second brain is basically our sketchbook. But you can't have a sketchbook without a system of using it. So how do we create our second brain using our sketchbook? In my book, I explain that the key ingredient is fascination. Have you ever asked yourself why you feel fascinated or inclined to certain things? Fascination is like someone has casted a spell on you. You are attracted to that thing without knowing why. This is an artist's inner voice, and we should give this feeling more attention. The reason why this is the key ingredient for building your second brain is because your fascinations will attract you to things that you as an artist will redraw or repaint or incorporate in your creations. For example, if you are fascinated by shells and you love them so much, you have a collection of them. You could draw each one in your sketchbook. The way you draw them will be unique, even though you are copying a live reference. Those drawings become part of your second brain, your sketchbook, and you may never use those drawings again until many months or years later when, with more experience, you pick up the sketchbook again and it sparks a new idea mixed with something else you picked up along the way. As artists, our second brain sketchbook is also used to collect our perception of reality. This is where all original ideas come from. We may all have the same eyes and nose and ears, but no two people have the exact same senses. In other words, we all perceive reality in vastly different ways. Thus, your reality is unique to you. That is why artists have different styles. They could be drawing from the same reference, but the way one artist perceives light, mood, and their opinion on what the focal point is, the way they mix colors, is all what makes a completely different artwork from the next artist. Only you know how you perceive things, but to share it with another person, you have to translate it to something tangible like an artwork. And to do that, you collect references of your perception, redraw things that fascinate you, whether you're traveling or at home, whether it's a machine or an insect. Redraw everything and collect them in your sketchbook. A collection of your own references of reality like this will allow you to make connections between completely unrelated topics, leading to originality. In my book, I also share a personal story on how I use this method to write a fantasy short story called The Inventory of Semi-Precious Creatures by combining two of the things that I was extremely obsessed with and fascinated with: gemstones and fantasy creatures. I share in detail exactly how I got the idea for this story and how I developed it, using one of my older fascinations for fantasy creatures which I've had for my entire life, and combined it with a newer fascination due to my first trip to Cape Town. I completed this short story, which I had tons of fun on, in January and February this year. It's 36 pages and it follows the adventures with my main character Thug, where he meets a sorceress named the Gem Keeper, and he meets all these creatures who reside in semi-precious gemstones. What I'm trying to say is this story and a bunch of artworks which made me feel so fulfilled to create all happened because I followed my fascinations, that obsession with gemstones. This way you don't even have to worry about originality. If you're creating solely from your unique perception of reality, then anything you create will be original, because nobody else has the same senses as the next person. Our brains are built to make connections. We see shapes in clouds and patterns on the pavement. It's a primal instinct to connect one piece of information with another. As artists, we can use this instinct to make unique artworks. In our sketchbook, we collect all our fascinations and the way we perceive reality. As time goes on, our brain will start making connections between these fascinations, leading to original ideas and fulfillment in our creations. That is the core of what I explain in my book. I also have case studies from different disciplines, as well as exercises for those who don't know where to start and just need a little more step-by-step guidance. So the key thing I would like you to take away from this video is that art and ideas come from using your unique perception of reality as a reference. The problem is that you don't immediately know when something in life inspires you for an artwork or a story that you will create later on. In the moment, you just know that you are fascinated by that thing. You won't be able to remember it in as much intense detail unless you capture it somehow. Build your sketchbook gallery of references this way. Capture anything you discover, whether you will use it or not, whether it sparks an idea or not. Just the fact that it fascinates you is reason enough. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I've inspired you today to pick up a sketchbook and collect all your fascinations. Be a little extra obsessed with everything that you love to do. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the best in your creative endeavors.